Call
This
the zoning board
conference
of
will
adjustment
now be
meeting.
recorded.
It's now 6 o'clock of December 17th, 2024. We'll call the zoning board of adjustment meeting to order. Our first case today is going to be case 24-16 Wallace Products. But before we start, we kind of had a rushed meeting last time. There's been some time to consider, and I just wanted to give anybody the opportunity to recuse themselves now that they've had time to think about it. None? All righty. We'll move forward then. Wallace Products.
Thank you, Chris. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. For the record, my name is John Cronin. It's my honor to represent the applicant here this evening. We were back a couple of months ago before you proposing development for this site. Include two sections, basically a commercial industrial section up in front. Mr. Tremblay, the principal of Wallace Building Products, is here with us this evening that he proposed for his company, along with 240 housing units down at the rear section of the property. The lot itself is a little bit over 120 acres in size, so it's a very large and unique parcel. It's not directly on Route 3, it's accessed through a side road and has limited visibility. Before we get into the merits, I know, Mr. Chair, you asked the members about recusal, but one of the least favorite parts of my job that we're required to do by the Supreme Court is to ask at the earliest possible date whether we have an issue with any members sitting and to request their recusal. And this particular case, I know Mr. Cropsey and I went through it the last, I think, 2 meetings ago about the basis for our rationale for recusal based on the juror standard and the statutory standard. Likewise, it came to light, Mr. Mitchell, at one of the prior meetings that is also a basis for his recusal. I want to reiterate, it's not a question of anybody's character, or it's not a personal attack. It's just something that in New Hampshire, the law is pretty well settled that anyone that goes to a court or a quasi-judicial panel like this is entitled to an impartial fact finder and decision maker, if you will. For example, if one of my brothers was on trial for a crime and I got called to sit in the jury, I think we could all agree that would not be appropriate because even though I may honor the law and may not like my brother, certainly the appearance of impropriety in my ability to be impartial would be strained. Likewise, in this case, Mr. Cropsey, we had the benefit of a memo which will incorporate from the prior record from a friend of yours, I believe, that you had occasion to dine out with and discuss this property outside of a public meeting and without notice to the applicant. And I know there was some confusion to the extent we suggested you paid for that report. That wasn't the intention, but certainly you had some role in it being prepared. If you look at that report, it basically covers anything from artifacts to rare species, and it's all speculation. So just for the simple sake of being involved and being friendly with the author of that report, we believe that that warrants you to step down under our existing law. Similarly, Mr. Mitchell, I believe it's a relative of yours that came and offered opposition and negative comment to this, not going into your prior rationale for deciding the case in the prior hearing, where I think your comments, and I'm going to paraphrase generally, and I may be not 100% precise, but when asked to provide your rationale, initially you said you weren't going to offer it, that you made your decision at home, which is certainly not consistent with the requirements for this particular board. So I think in fairness to my client and in fairness to the process, that both Mr. Cropsey and Mr. Mitchell should step down for this particular case. And to the extent, I know the call is theirs, but in the event that they won't, I would ask 3 other members of the board to consider making a recommendation to them so we have a clear record.
Any thoughts, Jim?
It's very clear in our disqualification handbook in the in the handbook that applicant had no opportunity to mention whether or not I had a familial relationship with somebody that is the applicant, or a monetary relationship with someone, and no such evidence was provided.
Okay. Any comments, Chuck?
No, my spouse, my wife, had written a memo that she asked to be included as part of the record, and it was not negative. Do I discuss things at home with my spouse? Absolutely, I do. And I believe that is protected under the law. And I have no intention to recuse myself.
Okay. How does the rest of the board feel about taking a vote?
I would prefer not to.
I prefer not to.
Or not to? I'm a little bit torn. The last time we didn't have alternates. We've fixed the system. We have alternates in place now. We have alternates in place for any perceived time when there isn't a clear-cut situation. You yourself have recused yourself from cases when you didn't have to, just because there was a possibility of it maybe being a little bit messy. There was definitely a lacking on the town's part, or on our part, to not have alternates. But like I said, we've kind of filled that void. So I think the mechanism is there to provide an uncontested hearing. That's the only reason why I feel a little bit differently. But if I'm the lone holdout, then I'm not going to be the deciding one on that, as far as a vote in that goes. Not interested in a vote?
No, I don't think we should. I think we should leave it up to board members.
Okay. All right. We'll continue.
Yeah, just for the record, I've prepared a memorandum detailing our positions on the recusal. I'd just like to submit this for the record so that it's complete.
Yep, for sure. It's just a written of what your synopsis just was just now. Okay. Okay.
Before moving to the merits of the case, I'll just say that preparing a case to come before the ZBA and finding a property and putting under agreement and engineering it is a very expensive proposition. And, to go through this process, you hope to have someone that there's not even a question of conflict. When it does, I'm certainly mindful and respectful that all the folks that sit on land use planning boards in New Hampshire are volunteers, and there's a wide umbrella of immunity, I think, that covers you for any good faith decisions. But to the extent that there's not good faith actions, and I think for these two gentlemen to sit here tonight on this board weighing in judgment on this when they've already articulated concerns is outside that scope, and really an injustice to Mr. Tremblay and his company. So I just want to put people on notice, to the extent that there are consequences for it, that we would think you would have personal responsibility for that. I'm going to go into the merits of the case. This particular site, I think you have the plan, and is pretty well known to you, both its size, its location, and its configuration. Chris has been kind enough to put it up on the board. When this site was looked at, it's a challenging site because of some of the unique features. We did also talk about two of the asbestos caps that sit on the property and that are fenced and signed. I believe one is fenced completely, one maybe partially. But to the extent they're not, we're certainly willing, as a condition of any approval, to make sure that that fencing and signage is done in accord with either the ZBA, the planning board, or both's wishes. Because there was some confusion relative to the caps and the impacts on housing, we didn't get one, but we got two experts. And one of them is with us tonight, Russ Barton from Wilcox and Barton. And we asked the question and basically said, hey, look, there's some fair comment from people. Now, these are lay folks that sit on the board that say, should we be considering approving housing in proximity to these caps? What's the risk? Well, we said, let's not judge it on our own. Let's get a couple of experts to go out and take a look at it and render opinions. And they did. And what we learned, and what I learned in this process, these asbestos caps are very well regulated, both nationally and locally. There's very high standards for what you do to cap an asbestos site, and very strict regulations on use and maintenance. And it just so happens that it's quite common for properties to be redeveloped under Brownsfields, which is a law that encourages the redevelopment of land that has asbestos caps in it to make it productive, not only for use for the owner, but also for the tax base. I know I'm covering up the plan as I lay out my file here, but I just want to, and I can read these into the record. They're kind of lengthy, but I'll start with the conclusion. And if you want me to read them into the record, I will. But Mr. Barton went out, he evaluated it, took a look at the plan, what we're proposing, gave us a report detailing of how these asbestos caps are done. Essentially, the material is buried at a depth that's required by the regulations and capped and then vegetated. That's to provide protection. There is no prohibition with respect to building housing in proximity to it. The vegetation is to keep the property sealed, and there's a regular maintenance and inspection program that goes along with it. I'd like to submit copies of this report, please, for the record.
Thank you. Tiny arms.
Thank you.
I also have another report here from Charles Teal. He's with the H.L. Turner Group. And I'll just read, it's a 2-page letter. He's has a lot of credentials in this type of work, which are depicted on his letter. He's a senior consulting engineer. In summary, asbestos landfills that are properly covered and maintained in accordance with environmental SW 2100, a recorded AUR, and ongoing maintenance do not pose a threat with respect to exposure from release as asbestos fiber. Accordingly, public health and safety relative to the nearby proposed development will not be impacted or otherwise compromised. So I think that's conclusion is what's important for you folks, where you look at things from a health, safety, and welfare point of view. I want to give this to you.
Thank you.
Aside from the experts' views, did a little bit more research and found some information from the EPA. One of them relates to a mixed-use development that's done on a remediated area that had an asbestos cap. Substantial mixed-use development, including housing. That's called South Bay, and that's in San Jose, California. I recognize that that's a long way away, but there's substantial documentation in this report that I think would be helpful for the board, and I brought some copies of that. There's a second one a little bit closer to home, also a mixed-use development, and that's located in Connecticut, where there's a permitted use of mixed-use development in proximity to asbestos sites. So if I could present these two for the record.
Please. Some light reading here. Bless some light reading.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's the one I found.
There was also some discussion about the proximity of the proposed housing to uses other than housing and concerns that they might have on a same lot. I think we noted that factually in that area, you have the 3M property that's down towards the end of the road, be north of this particular site. And there's a single-family homes in and around that area, very much in close proximity to the Mansville site. I'm not aware of any issues that have developed with the proximity of those particular properties, but checking out some of the things in town, I've got a map here. It's up of the Walmart and the big box, Sherwood Drive. If you look at it, the layout of the use up there, which I think has been a great success for the town, takes the frontage piece along Route 3, develops it with other than residential, and there's a substantial residential community directly behind it. In fact, they use pretty much the same access road to go through those parking lot to access the homes. And I believe, both the retail development and the housing development are very well regarded and have been successful not only for the property owners, but for the community. I'll submit that aerial into the record.
Thank you.
In terms of the housing and the need for housing and the two spirit of the ordinance and public interest prong, I think a day doesn't go by that I see some article in the newspaper that's relative to the need for housing throughout the state. We're tens of thousands short for projections for 2040. Governor Ayotte, who has just been elected, has not taken office yet. She has a couple of articles that appeared recently in the last couple of weeks, actually, in the Manchester Union Leader. And they talk about the desperate need for housing of all types and kinds, and the hope that local planning and zoning boards come around to support the initiative to create additional housing. I don't have the exact articles. They were accessed by a link, but the text and language, I believe, is self-evident here, and you can see the reports here from it. Again, I could read these into the record. One of them is from the Union Leader, December 16th, 2024, and the other one appeared in the Boston Globe on December 13th of 2024. But certainly both of them talk about the need for housing. When we look at this proposed use here of the 240 units, there's more than ample land to support it. The plan has been modified by Mr. Rice, who was here with us, to provide more separation. And you can see that green area between the residential buildings and the landscaping that's done in there. You can see the reference to the dog park and the pickleball, and generally to provide more spacing. We're also cognizant of the neutral position of 3M that wanted to make sure the landscaping and things were done appropriately, and we're willing to abide by those recommendations. Probably more of a planning issue than a zoning, but we're cognizant of it and want to be good neighbors and work with them to make sure that they're happy and satisfied. In terms of the criteria, the public interest and the spirit of the ordinance, both of those can be established if you can demonstrate that if the variance is granted, it will not diminish in a marked way or change in a marked way the essential character of the neighborhood. That neighborhood right now is mixed use. It's got housing, and it's got a pretty substantial industrial type use down there, and it works well. The inclusion of the housing in this development is not going to change in any way, never mind a substantial way, the essential character of the neighborhood. Both of those prongs are generally the same. When you look at the balancing test of substantial justice, you have a large piece of land here that sat idle for years and years. Many people have looked at it to do different things with it. I think it's pretty well settled because of its configuration and its visibility. It's not ideally suited to retail and some of those other great uses that we see that have been developed and are coming along on the major highway there. And these uses here can be compatible. One of the big things in the article talks about employment and economic base. Businesses need qualified people to work at their businesses. To get qualified people and bring them to an area, you have to have decent and safe housing. And everywhere you turn, there's shortages of housing for people to recruit and retain employees. This provides that. In terms of tax base, roughly a assessment if you took a $200,000 base per unit, which is what's been generally assessed in other communities as a market value base. And the actual construction costs today may be a little bit more than that. But you look at that, that's about $48 million in tax base. I know rates fluctuate and EQ ratios fluctuate, but that's significant. The number of school children in these developments aren't like they were when I was growing up. You know, apartments were, you went by them, there's generally a lot of kids that were there, a lot of burdens on the school systems. Right now, it's less than 1%. It's about 0.7%. So a project like this, you'd be looking probably 17 to 24 school-age children. And certainly with the tax base that this would generate, we expect it would be a revenue positive development, which would be beneficial to the town. I don't see any downside to the public at large with this. You get a tremendous amount of tax base. You fill a very desperate need on a piece of property that's been underutilized for a number of years. We do have information in the record and an expert report that we've provided and we'll incorporate again by reference from an appraiser talking about the value to surrounding properties, that if this was permitted and built out, it would not diminish the value of surrounding properties. And that makes complete sense where you already have the 3M facility there and an abundance of housing. The other thing I think about market demands is a new development here, market rate development. People have choices in the free market. You can tell that the property is near the water. It would be properly disclosed with the caps as a condition of approval. If you saw fit, would be willing to make sure there was a clause in the lease with big print and bold type that tells people about the caps, just so that they're aware. But if I'm out in the market looking for a place to live, I balance a lot of factors and a lot of options. How long a commute do I want? Do I want to be close to stores? Do I want to be close to restaurants? And I have the power to say no. If this isn't something that I don't want to live in, I can simply say no and find someplace else. In terms of the uniqueness of the property and special conditions, the fact that it sat idle for so many years, I think highlights that it's a unique and special property in that corridor. You know, anything from that area. Now you look at the U-Haul developing more storage a little bit closer to the lake, all the way out to Planet Honda and Kohl's. Anything along that corridor has been picked up and developed where it makes sense. This one is not. You know, it's just an odd configuration with access and the way it's situated. When you look at the application of the ordinance to this site, is it meaningful in any serious way? Not really. You wouldn't want to put a retail store. No one would pay to build it because people aren't going to drive down there and get off the beaten path to service them. And there are alternative uses, and some people say, well, you can do something else with the property that might fit the ordinance. Prior to Simplex, that would have been the standard, but that's no longer the case. You don't look at it and say, well, what else could they do or how they could do it? You look at the application before you. And Justice Horton in Grey Rocks, which is actually a dissent that led to Simplex, he was the one that talked about the hardship needing to be flexible, to be reasonable, and to make common sense. We believe here that the strict application of the ordinance to this property results in an unreasonable conclusion, and that there should be flexibility that would allow this property to be built out as proposed. I'm happy to entertain any questions that you may have. I also have with me the experts if you have any questions for them.
Any questions?
No, not at this time.
When was this these two projects, when were they built? I'm sure I can find it here in the report, but it might be faster if I just ask. The South Bay and I guess the question is, how long have they existed as developments?
I gave you all my copies, so I don't.
Okay, no, that's fine.
It was in the 90s.
In the
So I saw
90s.
someone, construction of the permanent cap over the entire site began on October 1996.
Okay. Thank you.
I didn't look at the other one though. I'm assuming it's similar.
And it wasn't so much looking for recency, and I thought that, the longer the period, the better.
That's
show
just
that
kind of
they-
was curious.
show
This
that
has
they
been
still-
decades that it's existed there.
Still survive.
Steve, was that the California or the Connecticut?
That was Connecticut. California looks as though it's earlier.
2000s.
1983.
Oh, no, it was developed in
Oh.
the 2000s, but
Early
80s.
2000s. Yeah. Okay, that was my question. Thank you. Any other questions for him?
Do we want to hear from the expert on the cap?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Russ, would you come up and talk to him a little bit about your report?
Good evening, folks. Russ Barton, one of the owners of Wilcox and Barton, and we did take a pretty extensive look at this, and I'll be glad to answer any questions that you may have regarding the cap or the caps.
Caps. Yep. So, do you know what year they were capped and cleaned up?
The process started back in the late 80s and into the early 90s, and they were officially recorded on the deed with an activity and use restriction around 2007.
What is the material used to make the cap?
The top 2 feet, 2.5 feet is really comprised mostly of just a gravel material. The top 6 inches is a topsoil vegetated cap that is designed to, facilitate the grass and whatnot. And that just has to be maintained. And there's very strict criteria that are laid out in the deed restriction for maintenance and operation and maintenance of that top layer.
And it's the responsibility of whoever the property owner is. Is that how it falls?
Yeah, that's correct. It's recorded with the deed.
Okay.
Correct.
Now I know with farming, you farm a field enough, eventually rocks will rise through it. Is that ever a concern with the cap that the heavier objects will eventually rise up?
Well, that's certainly a possibility, and the idea is that the inspection and maintenance program is in place to ensure that if there is any kind of eroding or any damage to the cap, that it would be then repaired and built up and continue to be maintained in accordance with the deed restriction.
Okay. Anybody else have any more? I have one.
Keep going. Yeah.
So along the river, it looks as though there's bigger boulders or stones.
Right. There's I believe it's a 3-inch minus riprap layer that's put along there.
So originally was the asbestos dumped into the river? Do you know anything about?
I'm not aware that was the case. It's just, in typical fashion, it's because of its proximity to the river. The riprap material is designed to be a little bit more withstanding from the water.
They just
So,
created a bigger
right,
material
a
there.
bigger,
to
a
hold
bigger
it.
barrier.
Okay.
Correct. Yes.
There's a question of maybe a monitoring well out in the property. Is that just to keep an eye to make sure that nothing's?
There
I don't
was
understand the
there
purpose
was a
of it.
groundwater monitoring program in place that has since also been closed with no further action required. There is no ongoing groundwater monitoring required.
Is that because they found there was no
Yeah,
progression and nothing
Right.
changed?
The monitoring period, typically groundwater management permits are issued by the state of New Hampshire for 5-year cycles. Each 5-year cycle, they're evaluated for compliance with the permit, modified as needed. In this case, the criteria that is met, which includes anywhere between 2 and 4 consecutive seasonal groundwater sampling events with detections below the state standards, is allowance for closure and termination of the permits. And that criteria has been met.
Now, who maintains or who enforces the mowing or because I believe the field has to be mowed at least once a year.
At least once a
And
year.
everything 2 inches must be cut.
Correct. Right.
Now, what if the property owner were to not do that?
Well, there is there is specific reference in there to the Tilton Board of Health being involved in that inspection program. So that can be, monitored at any level along the way as well to ensure that the inspections and the mowing and the maintenance is happening. The DES, the state does do routine checks on activity and use restrictions to ensure that they're being complied and met with. The last occurrence, I believe, was around 2014, where there was somewhat of a formal inspection and there was some requirements to do some upkeep. But that would need to be in good practice revisited as part of this to ensure
Essentially
that
enforced by the town.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Well,
I got one question, and I wanted to know if there was anything that the town of Tilton's health officer might like to add, since she's been around for a long time. Catherine? Can we get her a mic, please? Yeah, thank you.
Catherine Dawson, the health officer of the town of Tilton. There is an activity use restriction, 2014, you're right. I did inspect it. It wasn't being maintained. Since then, there's been a couple of inspections, and the property owner at the time, and I'm sure it's the same property owner, was not maintaining that asbestos site. The field does have to be cut yearly, or no, I think it's once every 2 years. I don't think it's yearly. That was not being done. There are trees, pines growing out of the bank of where the asbestos site is on the bigger site. And those were not, it's not supposed to allow trees to grow through it, because where do the roots go? Down. It has been very difficult, if not impossible, to get Department of Environmental Services to act on this. But again, that's the current property owner. I don't believe that property has changed hands to this. So that's on.
Yeah, I can't speak to the current ownership, but
That's on
I know that the current
property
owner
owner that
intends
owns
to
it now.
comply.
Now, could you speak to the effect of the trees in the field? What would potentially happen if that was not enforced and the trees?
Well,
it sounds like there's trees growing. Whoever,
Yeah. Okay.
You're the expert.
What you're not supposed to do is you're not supposed to, pull the trees, because by pulling the trees, you'd be, impacting the cap. You're supposed to cut the trees, just like you're supposed to maintain the grass. You're supposed to cut the trees. So that's what would need to be done to bring the cap back into compliance, would be to cut the trees. Okay. Any additional modifications of the cap would need to flow through, the regulators to ensure that you're still complying with the conditions of the deed restriction. There are provisions for doing that, work plans and such that are submitted directly to the DES, because, there are certain instances where, these caps become compromised, and then they need to be repaired and upgraded, and that can be done through the regulatory program.
And also, this is on, if this is approved through the planning board, a condition of approval certainly could be that the cap be maintained in accordance with the deed restriction, and that would give the town another and potentially a better enforcement mechanism, because then if the cap is not being maintained, that's a violation of a condition of approval. That gives the selectmen the authority to bring an enforcement action against the then owner to say, you're now violating not just your deed restriction, not just your license, but now you're also violating your site plan approval. And we can be in court seeking not just an injunction, but civil penalties in the amount of $275 a day. And sometimes that is a bit more of an incentive.
And that relieves the burden of chasing the state down to get the state to come. Is what
Yes.
that does. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, please.
I have a question concerning the definition of this particular asbestos landfill. Is it considered to be a brownfield or a superfund? Because what you gave us for information was at least one of these was a superfund. Oh, both of them are superfund sites. So can you talk about that?
Sure. So those are two. There are actually different programs.
Mm-hmm.
The Brownfields program is designed in point to develop impacted properties. That's the basis behind the Brownfields. The Superfund program is an EPA-driven program that is seeking funds to recover damages and cleanup efforts of a contaminated property. So they're kind of different. This particular one is just simply considered a asbestos disposal site in accordance with the New Hampshire rules. And so closure and capping of an asbestos disposal site in New Hampshire is a very prescribed program. So the brownfields program is in support of this closure, as when projects flow through the brownfields program and they get that covenant not to sue at the end of the project, that's basically an indication that the owner has followed the direction of the regulators, the DES, and they're agreeing that if they were to find something after the fact, later on down the road, they would then not be in a position to sue the owner because they had followed the guidance that they had been provided. So that's the framework behind the brownfields program. The capping of the area itself is a different section technically in the rules that is designed to guide the owner and the consultant in capping it and maintaining it and ensuring that when it's issued, when there's a no further action issued, which is a fancy word for saying site closure, that then the project is complete.
So there's no difference in the protocol of what happened, or there is a difference between Brownstone, what had happened, and the what is it called?
Superfund.
It's just different. It's just different terminology based on really where the project originated from. Oftentimes, Superfund projects are projects that have federally funded cleanup programs for properties that have gone defunct, and that there's no other action to get those properties cleaned up, and so that cleanup effort is driven by the EPA and their program. That's not the case here.
Answer your question.
Yeah, no, I guess I want to make just a brief comment, and it may not be popular with some of the town officials, but our town attorney mentioned something about the town could take responsibility and could maybe implement fines. I think historically the town of Tilton has not done a very good job with enforcing local ordinances and fining anyone or taking anyone to court for not following the town ordinances. And I know that's a history. That's just a comment. Thank you.
Like we should be better at that.
So what I'm hearing is the cap needs a little repair now, but that could be planning. That would.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yes.
Any more questions for him?
I'm all set.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have one for Mr. Cronin, if he's still. Is there any discussion on this? I don't know how to phrase this question. So there's another development that's been approved across the way. Has there been any discussion about, if this is approved, working between the two to kind of clean that intersection up?
Yeah, yes. I spoke with their engineer, had called me recently about their coming back, I believe, for some additional units and coordination with respect to the roadway work, which Mr. Rice is here, and there is some work that will need to be done in the state right of way, and it's best that that work be coordinated together.
Okay, so there is at least dialogue that we don't have two completely separate entities if this moves forward.
I'm sure the state will make sure that it's coordinated, but it's good that people are talking before that, just to get a sense of how you can do it in the most effective and economical way.
Mr. Attorney Cronin, who will end up owning this asbestos landfill after this transaction? Is this being reserved to the existing owner, or will it be assumed by the new owner?
Yeah, it's in the deed, and it will travel with the conveyance of the land, as will the maintenance and EUA and everything else. So I think council said this is an opportunity to make sure that's in good shape. We can't speak for how the prior owner maintained it, but I can tell you, Mr. Chris and his team are top operators. They run a great business, and we'd have no exception to a condition of approval at the planning board, which is pretty standard.
Any more questions for the applicant? No? We all good if we move to the public comment? Yep. Any public comment?
Kathy Mitchell, and I'm speaking as a resident and taxpayer who votes every March at town meeting, and I vote on zoning rules and regulations. And in this case, you're being asked to dissect what was approved by the voters, and you all are being asked to pull out apartments and condominiums from the zoning regulation, which lists every conceivable house or residence that is not allowed on that property. They don't even allow cemeteries on the property. So you can't be alive or dead and live in that region. And it's not like behind Market Basket, which is a different zone, but it's in this particular zone that you simply cannot build any kind of housing. And I understand that there's a need for housing, but I'm also saying the voters voted for this. And if you want to change it, you really ought to go back to the voters and come March, which isn't too far away, present the case, and the voters will tell you what they think. Otherwise, you're kind of making a mockery of voting. I mean, when I go to vote, I assume that it's going to be addressed and it's going to be followed. And I'm sorry to say that I don't like the idea of 5 hand-picked chosen ones being able to throw out that whole portion of the zoning ordinance, because it should be the people. Don't make a mockery of democracy.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Yeah, I see a hand up back there.
Thank you. Yes, Sandy Plessner. I just wanted to say, first of all, our zoning, the state does have leeway, and we are allowed to give relief from our own zoning, depending on the circumstances. And of course, this is also a good thing for the people who own land in this town. You know, if something could come up and you want to develop or put something on your property that may not be permitted, but if it's something that would be worthwhile to you and it's not interfering with the neighborhood, why shouldn't you be able to get an exception to do it, whether it be a variance or a special exception? Also, when this zoning was done, I'm going to say that probably at this point in time, it should have been looked at again and updated. At the time that all these zones were put into place, sewer was very limited at best, and so was water. And that whole area there where the regional commercial is, I mean, not regional commercial, resort commercial, at the time had no water or sewer. So we had to look at it from that aspect. But there is water and there is sewer now. So in my opinion, you should look at your zoning every so many years anyway. And it's been quite a long time since it's been looked at as far as the zones and what they need to be updated to current times. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Oh, one more.
Yes, I'm Jane Alden, and I'm speaking. I'm a member of the Lakes Region Planning Commission. I'm a commissioner. I'm also on the executive board. And I did check out, because we're responsible for the Brownsfield programs. This was never a Brownsfield site. It's a Brownsfield covenant. It's covered under an RSA. I put on my glasses to tell you what the RSA is. I know we have people in the audience who are real concerned about RSAs. It's RSA 147-F that covers the Brownsville Covenant Program. I have the sheet of paper from the EPA.
You're just missing the mic, Jane.
The sheet of paper from the EPA listing this property. It is under this covenant program, and what it means is that whoever buys the property or owns the property presently is required to monitor, to check on those wells that are there. But it's never been on the Brownsfield program. It was a covenant always because of the asbestos. And interestingly enough, I found out that when the plant was dissolved, some of the asbestos was given to local residents to use as fill in their property. So heaven knows where that is. Thank you.
For the record.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Sure, yeah. Question for who? Just a general question? Question for us? Oh, for the applicant?
I think so. So I probably missed it. There was a lot of dialogue that pertained to planning, but what is the reason for relief from the ordinance on this property? Why do they need, again, relief from the ordinance?
Would you like
Hardship
to-
used to be the language.
Would you like to answer it? Let me answer it.
Yeah.
Let's see. I'm sorry if I missed
That's
it.
okay.
Yeah, I'll try to address the question. Prior to Simplex, that may have been a relevant question, but now that's not a relevant question. It's whether or not we addressed and meet the 5 criteria.
Does that answer your question? Would you like to ask another question? No. Okay. Okay. Any other public comment? Anyone online?
Was somebody online?
Just give them a chance to unmute their computer there if they want. They're there. Not unmuting. Everybody good if we close public comment and begin deliberation? All right, we'll close the public comment and begin deliberating. Any initial thoughts?
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that our RSA 674:17, where it talks about purposes of the zoning ordinance, and I just want to highlight 3 of them, which are listed. It's actually 674:18, says zoning ordinance shall be designed, and I'm going to highlight just 3, to lessen congestion in the streets, to prevent overcrowding of land, and to avoid undue concentration of population. Those are 3 that the zoning is supposed to be doing.
Do you believe that this project that they're proposing on 100 and something acres is too dense?
What I am thinking is that when nothing in this town has ever had a population concentration with 240 units in a confined area, and I don't believe that right now that this project is in the spirit of doing things of relieving congestion or concentration of population.
I guess I'd have to do some educating on the intent of that RSA, what the definition of, maybe you could provide some guidance. That might be short notice for you.
I can.
Sure. I understand. Thank you, Chuck. 674:18. I would understand that without educating myself better, that's like not letting, housing stack on top of housing without providing the appropriate means for moving amongst that. I wouldn't interpret that as you can't build more dense housing, but I could be interpreting that incorrectly.
I think it also could be up to interpretation.
Yeah, sure. Any other initial thoughts?
I'm glad that they brought in the expert on the cap and on the 2 sites.
It definitely helps answer some
Yes.
gray areas and some questions.
Yes.
I have a question for us. Does it seem reasonable using applicants' children in this apartment complex, that there would be 0.00 children per unit, which when I calculated it out, works out to be for the 240 units, less than 2 children, 1.68 child.
Say point
I,
zero
I'm not
zero?
sure. Yeah, he
He
used a
said
different number.
he used 0.7%, which translates to 0.007. And I don't believe that is my experience in town.
I heard something different. He said approximately 20 kids, but I don't know if my
I didn't hear the number. I heard a percentage.
wow.
And the percentage does not match the number that was given.
Did anybody else hear approximately 20 kids?
Yes.
I missed that.
We mentioned the percentage and then approximately how many kids.
Okay.
We-
We can reopen public.
On the
discourse.
comments about with the number of possible children, I mean, that is absolute speculation.
Sure.
Absolutely.
You know, it's like saying be no kids, there could be 500. I mean, right now, this project would, without question, impact the town, I think, for a population change of between 500 to 700 people. And if we're looking at a town our size, which is the third smallest geographic community, I can imagine how this project would go if you tried to propose it in a town like Sandmerton
We're not the
or
same
even
town.
Northfield. And I'm just trying to say, right now, a concentration of 240 units to me is excessive. And in fact, I think it does, in fact, change the character of the neighborhood. Right now, the neighborhood are single-family dwellings on the outside of this particular zoned area. Thank you very much.
Do we know the size of the other? There are a couple apartment areas in Tilton. Do we know the size of the other ones? Is there anything of this scale?
I'm not aware of any.
Lockmere has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Someone correct me, 5-ish buildings. I want to say with 4 or so apartments in each. I mean, there are apartment buildings in the greater community. I can't think of all the exact ones within the borders of the town. But at the same token, I
You have the cluster housing just up the road.
Where?
The
Where?
It's
School
clustered in
Street.
Lockmere.
School Street.
In a less
There's School
condensed.
Street too, but I think there's also one in Lockmere.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think we're like arguing population density here, and none of us have done the math on what the population density on these apartments on 240 units on the 100 and something acres this is. I mean,
Well, I don't think it's because it's not 124. It's probably the section of it.
sure. I guess as far as like, it's not 100 acres of housing development, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Right. I think it is large given it is somewhat out of character for the town, given the scale.
It is new for the town, for sure.
And I concur that it is different in scale as well. There's nothing quite like this in town. And that particular neighborhood, if you take the definition of neighborhood and extend it to include businesses and industrial, that's that neighborhood there where this is envisioned does have some single family, but it's mostly commercial and industrial. I'm not aware of any apartments in there, even in neighboring towns.
I don't know that I don't know the answer to this. I mean, the entire area is a built up area. This is not an undeveloped area. And the piece of property we're talking about is slated for large scale development. Like that's what this property was set aside for. This has been my feeling on this since their first proposal, rather, is that this piece of property was slated for large scale development. It's not reasonable to build it out as a mall. It's not reasonable to build it out as retail because it has zero frontage on the main drag in town.
That's an opinion.
I mean, maybe it is an opinion, but it has sat vacant for 20 years.
I know properties that have been vacant for a lot longer.
While the rest of properties of scale have remained undeveloped. I guess it is an opinion, and this is a board of taking the information that's given you. I'm going to finish my sentence before you cut me off. This is a board of taking information that has been presented to you and then developing how you feel that information has been presented. what are the facts as you see them? And to cut me off if you believe I'm wrong here, if I'm misunderstanding this, please, attorney. You've been presented a set of facts. We have been presented a set of facts by the applicant. And then we will interpret them as such and then make a vote. And we are going to deliberate here. And I totally appreciate the fact that you guys don't agree with what I'm saying. And that's okay. We can disagree on it. It is a little bit opinion. It is a little bit how you interpret the application that has been made before us and how we interpret the intent of all the 5 criteria and whether or not we interpret they've met the 5 criteria. That's like, before we go down though, that's an opinion thing. For sure. That's my interpretation of what they've presented. That's all I want to say with that.
And I would like to say that while we are eliciting comments and opinions and questions from one another here, that I don't feel that it's appropriate to get into a debate and to try to defend a different point of view that someone is expressing. That's all I wanted to say, Matt.
I feel debate is good because we could change our mind with debate.
Sure.
As long as it's public and friendly.
Yes. Test the opinion. Challenge the opinion for sure.
That being said, regardless of all the things we've been talking about, I think the elephant in the room for me is hardship. I feel personally that the light industrial use has solved the problem of hardship for this property. I agree that the property is different than the surrounding properties. It is not a commercial property. There's not much Route 3 road frontage, or none. And I do feel that the light industrial has solved that problem.
Okay.
I have some questions about the notes that were on the new map. And I noticed that under the sites at the bottom, it mentions the concept is contingent on variances. Then it says also on traffic studies, but also on the contingent on the town condo subdivision approval. And I guess my question, and I don't have the answer to this, and maybe I should have asked it earlier when Mr. Cronin was up there, is what is the plan on the potential conversion of these, which are currently listed as condos, to be converted into, currently listed as apartments to be turned into condos? Because that's what it says here. The whole concept is contingent on a condo subdivision approval.
Would that be planning?
Well, the question can be asked. We have to reopen. With the vote on that, or can we just do that? Okay. Are we all in favor of reopening public comments so that we can get the answer to that question?
I would like to have a response from Mr. Cronin, if he would, please.
Very good.
We'll take it out of deliberation and back to public comment.
And the question is, again, could you restate it?
Just to explain the concept, the number 3 under the site issues, the number 3 bullet is concept contingent on town condo subdivision approval. And just the question between, is it apartments or condos? And what is the condo subdivision approval that the project is seeking?
It's currently proposed as apartments. Like any piece of property, my house, your house, probably could seek to convert it to condominiums if you could meet the regulations in the future. The condo that you're referencing there was to distinguish the apartment properties from the non-residential. So
Okay.
layout and probably would create maybe a different unit for the various asbestos, but that's something we would typically have a discussion with the planning board with. And I haven't looked at your planning regulations, but in the subdivision, when you create a condo, generally they want some type of condominium subdivision plan with the specifics laid out. But we see a number of properties that have lived for years as apartments that people convert them to condominiums. And I've seen them go the other way. In Concord recently, there was a condo that went back to apartments. So that's part of the bundle of rights any property owner would get. But the condo that you're referencing there is to divide the non-residential from the residential.
That's your question, Jeff.
No, fine. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll close public comment, go back to deliberating. You good with that?
Very good.
I think a little bit of it that's nuance. I mean, it doesn't matter whether it's residential, whether it's residential homes, residential apartments, residential condos. We're talking the use of the land as being residential, not whether the use of the land is residential in apartments or residential in condos.
Yeah, it doesn't change anything.
It doesn't really change anything.
Should we go? Oh,
What's that?
Can we stipulate the number of units, or should it just be that the property is housing? Correct. So it would be the entire parcel then. Okay.
Does that answer your question? So you're asking if the number of units can be changed?
Well, I was asking if the entire parcel, the condition is that any residential be allowed under this zoning in this parcel. It's a 120-acre parcel.
Oh, right. Could you put it anywhere?
no. Could
no,
you do
could-
it, or if we're not allowed to cap the number, could he
Correct.
then take the variance and apply that to the whole property?
He can't take it
Correct.
beyond the number requested.
Correct.
The applicant must provide a number. Yeah. Yeah.
Listing condition of approval if you want. And sometimes when you get over to the planning board, if they are looking at the details, they might knock the number as more streets or more green space or more parking or things like that. That happens not uncommon.
Are you saying it's not on zoning to get hung up on density per se? That is,
Saying this meets your density requirements, so density is not something we necessarily should be focusing on. This is a
use.
Use.
Okay. Thank you.
And they're asking for 240 units and they can't put more than that on.
Right.
I just wanted to find one thing here. I had a thought, I lost it.
You want the application? Do you have it?
Nope. I guess, do people want more time to think on this?
Should we go through the criteria?
I guess I'm asking this question first before that,
Oh, okay.
to find out if people want more time to digest this.
Digest everything that was handed to us tonight.
That's it's up to you. I personally, this answered the report from the environmental engineer, answered the questions that I had there. That kind of summed it up pretty nice.
I would be curious to read those, but I don't
Take more time.
feel that I get the gist of it. But it did answer all the questions I had about it.
That's my feelings as well, that my questions were answered.
Jack?
I was given so much material here
You want to take
by
another?
Mr. Cronin that I haven't had a chance to really read it. And while Mr. Cronin was giving his presentation, I mean, it wasn't appropriate for me to stop and take time and go through everything I got here. So I would appreciate more time.
Yeah, that's why I'm bringing it up. That's fine. Would anyone like to make a motion?
Sure, I'd like to move that we not take action on this tonight and to schedule for our next meeting in January.
Coming up. Hold on one second. So a motion to continue, would that be the technical version here?
Yes.
Motion to continue. I gotta write this down so I can say it all right.
January 20th.
To continue until our next meeting in January, which would be on
January 21st.
January 21st.
January 21st.
Okay, so Chuck has made a motion to continue case ZB 24-16 to January 21st.
I'll second it.
Okay.
I have faith in your ability to do
I do too.
I do too.
Yep.
Yeah, that's fine. We'll continue to the 21st.
An motion.
The motion has been made and seconded by Steve Bunce.
I would say that I think that it does the applicant justice to give him an additional time for us to review this.
There is quite a bit to digest here, for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
And just so I'm clear, you're continuing the deliberation to the 21st, the public hearing.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay, made and seconded. Any other discussion about it? Roll call. All right. Those in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
The motion passes. We'll continue the case on the 21st. Thank you for coming in. So much paper. Okay, Chuck made a request that we hold off on Haven Grove only because we had only had this meeting for that case, and then this one came in. Is everybody's feeling to just continue on, or do you want to?
How do you mean that we should decide, work on Haven while they're here?
Chuck made a request that when we first came in that we postpone it because it was, this meeting was only scheduled initially as a meeting for Wallace.
For Wallace.
And then this came in since then. There's an open public meeting? Okay, well, that answers that then. All right, next case is ZB 24-17. Haven Grove. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Nah. Need a little sugar boost. Whenever you're ready.
Oh, thank you. Good evening. Thank you for being here, doing your job. And I am John Bernard for the record. I would like to start off by saying this was approved unanimously for 40 units 4 or 5 months ago. We all walked the site. The ZBA walked the site. We're familiar with the site. After my approval, I did a study, a traffic study at the request of DOT. When the traffic study got done, it took about a month and a half, they came back and said that in contrary to what they had said before, anything under 100 units, I wouldn't have to do much mitigation to the road, just some of it. But after the road study got done, they came back and said, you're going to have to widen the road, you're going to have to put turn lanes in, and it changed the whole project and the whole nature of it. That made it so the project wasn't really financially viable at that time. We know when we walked this property, we talked about it going in phases and that we would come back for further development. When we went to get financing on it, they said, it doesn't financially work with the 40 units. I said, yes, but we're going to go back. And they say, well, that really doesn't work for us. You have to know that you can get them. I said, well, I have 50 acres and we're really only doing 40 units on it. I'm sure it's fine. Led me to here tonight. So the reason why we're here is because of what the road engineer, traffic engineer did. What was confusing to me is that the DOT told me that I was all set, and then they asked for a weight study. So we completed the weight study. When we got done, the engineer said not only did they take into account of what's existing out there now, but what is on slated to be approved. For example, the one that was here earlier. They have to take that traffic into account. Plus, they do it to the year 2035, what they expect for traffic. So that is why we're here, in a nutshell. We know that the Lind is a really nice piece of property. We can all agree. We all saw it. It all works for housing. It's allowed for housing in the zone. And we're also proposing that we put 20 acres into a green space. That green space would connect to the other green space that was provided when they did Home Depot. They put 25 acres. It also butts to the golf course and it would allow for a really nice wildlife corridor. And the area that we're setting aside was actually on a map saying that that would be a good wildlife corridor. So we've done everything we can think of to make this site appealing to everybody. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Steve, but I just wanted to give you an explanation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Stephen Nix. I'm representing John Bernard tonight. John's explained to you the background regarding the prior approval for 40 units. We're here tonight for a variance request from the Tilton zoning ordinance Article 6 Appendix B, which is the chart of permitted uses. We're asking that the ZBA allow an additional 96 units combined with the previously approved 40 units for a total of 136 units in 34 4-unit multi-family dwelling structures in the resort commercial zone. I've outlined most everything I've said. I'm going to say tonight I've put into my handout, but I'm not going to read it to you verbatim. I'll try to skim through it. I don't think I can do it in 1 hour and 6 minutes like the last applicant. The single, as John said, single family residents are allowed in the resort commercial zone. So residents are allowed in this zone. We're asking for the variance to allow multifamily housing. I do want to point out that, again, these would be 4-unit buildings. The sketch that we have on the board is a conceptual plan only. The development would be within the purple area, but when we get to the design phase, the engineers will tell us exactly how to fit those things, how to fit the units in as best they can. One of the goals is to have a garage under in as many units as possible. So they may, they'll turn them and whatnot so the garage can be under. John also wants to see if he can get a few units in there that are single floor for older folks who want to have a single floor living. He's not sure whether that'll happen or not, but he wants to be able to have that option. The property is located at 246 Laconia Road in the resort commercial zone. The entire property is 49.7 acres. 49.8 acres with 404 feet of road frontage on Route 3. The property is currently approved for and being developed and on its way for outdoor storage and 3 storage buildings, which are shown on this plan here. These are the 3 storage buildings, and then this area over here, I believe, was approved for outdoor storage of boats. The site work for the storage units is underway. As John indicated, let me back up. Department of Transportation originally approved a curb cut for the storage units, and the curb cut was for a circular road, which is hard to see, so I'm going to draw it on here. The circular road goes like this. And it's a one-way in here and one-way out here. And that circular road will continue and provide access for the housing out back. John went over the fact that DOT is now going to require turning lanes. We don't know exactly what that's going to look like, but it's going to be pretty substantial because this is a one-way in and a one-way out. The 40-unit proposal, again, was not economically viable. Therefore, the applicant is asking for more units. The proposed scope of work, again, 136 units in 34 structures with 4 units per structure. A majority of the units will be 2-bedroom. There will be some that are 3. I talked about the garage under. John also wants to provide small garden plots for some of the units. We don't need them for all because not everybody wants a garden plot, but there's plenty of land out here to do it, as you can see. And a lot of people these days enjoy having their gardens, so that's what he wants to do. There's going to be a private road network with sufficient parking. There is municipal sewer, which will be brought to the site. Municipal water is available. However, the applicant is reserving the right to put in a community water system because the cost of the municipal water system may be too much, and it may be a better way to go if he does a community water system. The area in the green area on this map will be a set-aside area, but we're going to reserve the right to put in the wells and a house and an access road to those wells if we need it. There's plenty of area out there for the protective well radius, which requires that there be no development in the protective well radius except for the access road. So he does want to preserve that right. He also wants to preserve the right to put trails back there for hiking or cross country for the residents. There's plenty of area on the site for stormwater design. The area, I think everyone's been out there. This property slopes down away from the proposed building site, so the water would drain either through pipes or into drainage areas. We do have Ryan Hodock here tonight from Horizons Engineering, who can answer any questions regarding the technical details, although we're in the preliminary stages of that. The proposed development area, which is the purple area, is approximately 15 acres. And let me go back to this plan. The area in white, which is out here, is being reserved for future development. We don't know exactly what would go in there at this point, but we do want to reserve it. I want to point out that there is a wetlands on this site with wetlands impacts, and I don't have a blue pen here, but this is the wetlands right here. It comes down and then crosses through. This, several months ago, we were here, I believe we were here at the planning board, and there was somebody who from the state that brought in maps that showed this as a wildlife corridor. So one of the ideas here is to have the green area out back. Again, that's this plan. The green area picks up most of that wildlife corridor that they had shown and attach it to the already protected wetlands, which would come down and cross the road here. And the red line on this, if you can see it on the ones I handed out to you, the red line is the area for the storage facility. As I mentioned, this particular layout of the buildings is conceptual only. Once they get into the engineering, that may change. I'll get into the application criteria for granting a variance. It's a 5-part test. As we know, the variance will not be contrary to the public interest. The spirit of the ordinance is observed. 3, the substantial justice is done. 4, values of surrounding properties are not diminished. And 5, literal enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance would result in an unnecessary hardship. I'll go through those. Each test 1 and 2, the New Hampshire Supreme Court has sort of bundle these two tests together. That's contrary to the public interest and spirit of the ordinance. And the court, and I've have this at length in my handout to you. For a variance to be contrary to the public interest and inconsistent with the spirit of the ordinance, its grant must violate the ordinance's basic zoning objectives. Mere conflict with the terms of the ordinance is insufficient. So in other words, when you have an ordinance, it can't be set in stone. There has to be some type of safety valve. That's what the U.S. Supreme Court said years ago. You're the safety valve. That's why we're here. There's two methods to ascertain whether granting the variance would violate an ordinance's basic zoning objectives. Number one, does the variance alter the essential character of the neighborhood? And I'll go through that. I don't think these are going to show up very well, but we'll try it. Yeah. This property is located east of I-93, exit 20 in the resort commercial zone. The boundary between the densely developed regional commercial zone and the resort commercial zone is the westerly boundary of this property. And I'll point it out to you right here. This is the westerly boundary of the property. The red area over here is the densely developed regional commercial zone. Within this zone, and this line right here is Route 3. Within this zone, you've got Home Depot, BJ's, Tanger Outlet, Hobby Lobby, the Hampton Inn. There's smaller commercial developments, and these are all right within this area. LaChance's Water Filtration, Rap City, there's a truck undercoating company, Valvoline, there's a body shop, and there's multiple signs. So there's a dense area of development in here. Just north of the regional commercial zone is an industrial site. The Nickerson Industrial Park is here with industrial buildings in there. There, just as a matter of information, there is no connection between the industrial park and this property. So they're sort of completely separated by the undeveloped wetland, and that green area will provide that separation in the future as well. There's few single-family homes in this area. And I should say that to the resort commercial zone goes off to the west and across the highway, and I remember get this right, the medium density residential zone, which has those single family homes that were being talked about earlier in this area over here. So really what this piece of property is, it's a transition between the dense regional commercial and the resort commercial zone. This is one of the factors that make it very unique, and we'll talk about that later. To the northwest of the property is a golf course, which is right here. There is the storage facility and U-Haul rental facility here that abuts. And there's in this little triangle right here is the vet shop, or the veterinarian clinic, I should say. And then this little cutout right here is a commercial, retail commercial landscaping company, which is not operating at this time, under as far as I know. Again, we're talking about the, I apologize. The essential character of the neighborhood and whether it will be changed or not. This multifamily housing project would be 200 feet from the highway. It will be behind the storage units, so it will be away from the commercial development along the highway. Direct abutters, the landscape business, veterinary clinic, and commercial storage facility are down the other side of the hill, and quite frankly, probably won't see this because this development will be from the ridge going the other way. So there'll be very little impact. There will be no drainage going in off site in the direction of the abutters. All the drainage will be headed in a northwesterly direction, in a easterly direction, um, down towards the wetland. And again, it'll be treated before it gets there. This will, the multifamily housing will act as a transition zone. And I've talked about that. So given the above facts, this multifamily use will not alter the essential character of the neighborhood, as it will act as the transition between the heavy development and the less developed um, uh, residents in this area and the golf course and storage units. Does the zoning objective test 2, does the variance threaten the public health, safety, or welfare? This is relatively easy to address. We have municipal water, we have municipal sewer, which is available. We have municipal water or a adequate area for on-site small community water system. The structures will meet all building and fire codes. There's plenty of area for stormwater drainage facilities. There's plenty of area for parking and service facilities such as trash removal and snow removal. All of those details will be handled at the planning board, but we're pointing out that there's plenty of area on the site for those. There will be recreational facilities in the way of trails and garden areas for the people who live there. Traffic will be handled through DOT. We talked about the turning lane and the loop road, so the traffic is not an issue. Based on these factors, there is no threat to the public health, safety, or welfare. Variance test number 3 is the substantial justice test. In the substantial justice test, the court has said that we need to look at whether the gain to the general public by denying the variance request outweighs any loss to the individual, and whether the proposed development is consistent with the area's present use. I'll talk about test number 1, the gain to the public by not granting the variance versus loss to the individual. In the last presentation, Attorney Cronin talked about the lack of housing in New Hampshire. I'm going to specifically talk about the lack of housing in Tilton. And I have the citations to the 2023 housing report that's in my report. You can easily find it online. It's pretty long, but if you download it and type and do a word search for Tilton, you'll see that Tilton has been focused on as being one of the sort of, and I don't take it personally, problem towns as far as housing goes. Tilton has a 2 to 3 times more jobs than housing for workers. This means that people who work in Tilton are unlikely to be able to find housing in town. They have to commute from somewhere else. 93% of the jobs in Tilton are filled by people who don't live here. There's 2.38 jobs per housing unit. Again, in the report that I have cited in there, they really focused on Tilton, and I think Lebanon was the other town that they were focusing on. In other words, Tilton has a severe deficiency of housing units compared to the number of jobs. Granting this variance will provide additional housing stock within the town and near the jobs. And when I say near the jobs, it's going to be right there, essentially right next door. That's the goal of these apartments is to, or these units would be to provide housing for the workers. One alternative to the construction of multi-unit housing is more commercial development, more intense commercial development, which quite frankly will create more traffic in that area and create more jobs without having housing to support it. Another alternative would be to create or to build roads into the property and create single family housing. And quite frankly, because of the development requirements, again, it's going to require the turning lane. These would be, the only way to do it would be to provide high-end housing, which quite frankly just doesn't work. The price of the units would have to be astronomical to make it work. So the loss to the individual is high, in that the economics just don't work. And the gain to the town is very little. As a matter of fact, I look at it the other way. The gain to the town is huge with this development, providing the housing for the workers. Test number 2 in substantial justice test is the proposal consistent with the area's present use? And I think I pretty much gave a good overview of what's going on out there. We've got the heavy use, the heavy commercial use coming off the interstate, and then it changes into smaller commercial uses. On the right-hand side are all the single-family homes that are down near the lake, and this provides a transition. So it is consistent with the development of the area. We submit that the surrounding property values will not be diminished. As a matter of fact, this particular development would probably enhance surrounding property values. There's been no evidence supplied that there would be any diminution in value to abutting properties. Unnecessary hardship. The first thing we have to do in the unnecessary hardship test is talk about the special conditions of this property. And I have gone over and described what this property is all about. The property's unique location at the edge of the zone. It provides transition. The property's size, 49 acres. The property's layout, it's long. I don't want to use the term narrow because it isn't narrow, but it's longer going back. So these housing units would be back away from the road. It has municipal water and municipal sewer, or it also has the area to support on-site wells. It has access on Route 3, and the developer has provided a loop road access, which is a safe condition. That's sort of unique in this area. The green space set aside, it recognizes the wildlife corridor, which comes down through it. The wildlife corridor is another unique aspect of this particular piece of property, and we're trying to respect and preserve it in this. There is no fair and substantial relationship between the general purpose of the ordinance based on the unique aspects that I just talked about. If we read the resort commercial ordinance, it says, it is designed for recreational restaurant accommodations together with small-scale retail services along Route 3 and 11 adjacent to Silver and Winnisquam Lake. Sewer is planned but not yet available. When this ordinance was written, sewer was not available in this area. Sewer has now become available. If you look at the other zones in town where sewer is available, multifamily housing is allowed. So given these facts, and again, residences are allowed in the resort commercial zone. So residents are allowed. We now have sewer. And given all these facts, the stated purpose of the zoning ordinance is not violated here. As I go down through my list, I realize that I think I've covered everything, and we would take questions. I'll answer any that I can, or I would hand the baton off to the engineer or John.
Any questions for him?
I got a few questions. I noticed that the area that is in white, not the green or the purple, you said that the owner of the property wants to reserve the right for future development. Now, although I did participate in the site walk on that property, was unable to physically walk the entire property. But I believe that area, which would be just up from the road, which would be connecting to those units, is a very steep slope. And I was just wondering, at earlier in my conversation with the owner, he had remarked that because of the steep slope, that they wouldn't be able to do anything with it, and they would not be developing it. Now I'm hearing that he wishes to reserve that. And when you look at that, you can see that there are some wetlands on there, not only that little section in the middle, but the ones that connect further down. And so I'm trying to anticipate why that area, which was originally suggested that they might not be any additional development, is now wants to be reserved. I was wondering if there's any answer to that.
Chuck, I'll be happy to answer this one.
Sure, thank you.
You're welcome. Can we point? So this area in here, I went to great length down through here, all the way back, not to cut the trees. There's mature growth there, as you all witnessed out there. There's pine trees that are 36 inches round, plenty of oak. I've never let them cut in there. They wanted to cut in there, and I didn't do it. The reason why I didn't include that in it is because we maybe use drainage pipes to go down there. We have to go for alteration of terrain permit. And when you do that, you need to have every tool in your toolbox available to you. So that's why I didn't do it. But not only do I intend to do it, I have used actions by not allowing them to cut through this whole section down through here. And it is steeper slope than the rest of the property. And I don't really think it would be good for development. But the reason why I left that alone and didn't put it in the green space is because I may need to put pipes down through there for drainage. That's it, Chuck. That's the reason. We don't plan to develop that slope area.
Okay, well, that's a clarification, but the comment that was made by Attorney Nick said that you reserve the right to maintain that for future development.
Yes.
That is a little bit different than putting in some drainage pipes.
I agree with you. Now, let me be perfectly clear. This area down in here, we will reserve the rights to develop, and we think that that may be developed down here, not for housing, but for something else. So we're not really bringing that in front of the board. What we're really saying today is, look, if we can get these units approved, we can start to move forward, start to help the housing crisis. We're willing to put 20 of the acres aside right now. The rest, we're going to keep this. But I don't know how else to say it, Chuck. If I could get your vote by you saying, if I put this as a green space, but we're allowed to put pipes through it in case we have to do it for the drainage, I'm okay with that too. But all of these things that are put on here take a lot of thought. They're not just, these lines just aren't thrown on. This design right here, this is an engineered design. We took units away, put units on it, looked at the topos. A lot of engineering and a lot of time and money went into that, which my engineer's here to speak to that if you'd like to. But that's the best answer I can give you, and that's an honest answer.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. I guess we have to remember that we're here to discuss whether or not housing can go on this piece of land, not whether or not he intends to develop housing on it further on down the road. It's the topic at hand is housing. That's just like want to bring us back into our lane that we are learning about. Can I just get a clarification? With the green space, is that formally conservation? Is that what you're talking about doing? I just don't understand if this is like
greens. Well, go ahead.
Let me answer the question. Let me ask you a question. When you say formally conservation,
I don't know.
Would it be granted as conservation to some organization?
Yeah, I guess I don't understand what that means when you say you're going to put it into conservation. Is that like a formal status? If somebody can help.
Well,
me.
yeah, it is, and there's a and your attorney can probably back me up on this, but there's a couple ways to do it. One would be if there was actually a conservation easement granted to some organization, Conservation Commission, Lakes Region, whoever. The other way to do it is under the approval process. here tonight, if you approve it and we've told you that that is green space, there is a statute, and I don't remember the number, that says once you approve it and we've said it's green space, that that is now considered a conservation easement.
Okay, it's formally binding.
It's formally
Okay,
binding.
I
Yeah,
understand.
perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
There you go. Good. She's a student of the the ordinance.
Okay, I apologize. I just want.
No. That's fine. Yeah, I got to explain something tonight.
Any other questions?
Keep going.
Okay, so there's 34 buildings, correct?
Correct.
Okay, 4 units per building, so 136 apartments. Are they 2, 3, 4 bedroom? Is there?
Most of them will be 2. There will be a few 3.
Will be 2, okay.
Yeah, but
Do you have an idea of population living at this?
The cast, yeah, because it's whether or not we're going to allow it. Doesn't.
Okay.
It's right. 136 units. That goes to planning whether or not it meets density.
Well,
Sorry.
I think we've already approved a special exception for this, so that there is
We approved a variance for this.
a variance for this to allow housing. Those allow apartments, I believe, because the housing is already allowed. Right.
You approved
Right.
because that was the cap on that application, they have to come back.
Got it.
Because they went to 130. That still meets your density requirements. But they come back for further approval for the same use. It still meets your density requirements. But because of the implied condition of approval, they need to come in for a new approval. So I know what you're thinking. And I'll talk to you about that up there if you want.
I actually don't know what I'm thinking.
We did also approve a special exception for this property.
There you go.
For the house, the storage.
The storage. Yeah.
That's what I had. Be confused. Thank you, Matt.
That's where I was going to.
I think the answer to this, you're talking about maybe not hooking up to the municipal water.
Correct.
And utilizing a well system, but it is going to be hooked up to municipal sewer.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
It will be a water system.
Yeah. Yeah, there'll be.
Right, but it was kind of one of the things that made this piece of property significantly different is that it had since gotten sewer back.
It has sewer, right. Yeah.
Can I make a comment?
Yeah, please.
No, I'm just trying to envision, I know you said that you are hoping to be able to have some parking underneath the units. But as I also think about 136 units as approximately 2 parking spaces per unit, of trying to visualize 272 parking spaces here. The way these buildings are laid out, they're also so very close together. I am assuming, but I don't know the answer to this, that this is kind of like an imposed hardship in that Mr. Bernard feels that he needs this number of units in order for him to be able to make a profit on his investment in the purchase of the land.
That's correct.
And to be able to make the connections on the highway.
Correct.
I do believe that in generally speaking, but I can't be sure of this. I'm sure the attorney will correct me if I'm wrong, but because someone has a financial issue of their investment is not necessarily a hardship.
And we didn't mean to present that as a hardship. We were presenting that as a fact that that's why we're here. Is that the other plan didn't work. If you look at well, I'll just leave it at that.
May I?
Yeah.
I was reviewing this and I recall that there were parking spaces that were with the previous 40 units that were indicated where the parking might be. But that going to Chuck's concept, I don't see.
I don't think we can get tied in parking because if they can't put enough parking spaces on, then planning is going to say you can't put 136 units in here. You don't have enough spaces for parking.
Yeah.
Ah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's okay.
So the question here is, the question we have to answer tonight is, are we going to allow multifamily homes on this piece of property, given the presentation that has been made in their application? Am I packaging this correctly? And that's the question at hand.
Yeah.
Will we allow, as a board,
The additional units.
the change? Well, yes and no. Yes, they are asking for more units than they originally asked for, but the ultimate question is, will we allow multifamily housing on this parcel?
We've already done that though, Matt. The question now is, will we approve 136 units?
Okay. We're going to recess for a few minutes.
Okay. Oh, okay. So are we going to end the public hearing or? Thank you.
Okay, we're going in the outer room here.
Yes.
Emails. The attachment doesn't. I get
Is it?
I don't get it.
Is that new or is that mobile?
Oh, yeah.
Exactly. We'll try it once.
24 now. Look, the houses, you know, the other one was all about asbestos. What's this one? We don't know. Yeah.
Well, it's hard. Yes. Yeah. You don't have the plan answer. Don't hold back though. Just tell us how you feel. I said.
A while back. Say that with Mike behind you. That doesn't turn off ever. No, you shouldn't.
No, that's Steve. He put it over there.
More market. Do see.
Oh, yeah, right.
Some of the lower end ones dry off. Some of the lower end ones, I guess, those ones, decent, 55%. So your mobile home goes up double. Yeah. Oh, they're getting. It was something for the cheap. Now you're talking. No, behind the water. 350.
There's a very nice farm.
Their amenities. 50% as well. Well, and Jensen's. The other three were.
You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Right?
Carry on.
I think it's reality.
True.
I don't want to stop being private. I know there are some towns.
No, I'm just gonna interrupt you. I'm just him interrupting me all the time.
Maybe we some sort of a small light here because I'm watching the older people who have vision issues.
You're on
We should have some sort of light where they can see a little bit better right up here. You know what I mean? Like a book light or something over here that they can spread if they're trying to read their notes. It's hard to see. Just saying, you know?
No, that's a good point.
Because if you look at I can show you a perfect example.
Well, I can tell you this though, Cindy. I was thinking, I've got to get a strip built here or something so that this can be up higher and this can be over here, because every time one of the attorneys is out here and they've got papers, I'm thinking, don't touch anything.
Yep, you got a point there. But because I mean, for me, right here, it's really hard.
Right.
And if you turn a light on.
Well, oftentimes podiums have a light.
Yeah, well, that's what I was
Yeah,
thinking.
yeah. I mean, it wouldn't be difficult.
Just because I'm old.
As long as it's not, not in the way. Sometimes we do get people that are pretty short, come into the podium and want to speak, and we have to put the thing way down here.
I've watched the other meetings with other people that are doing this, and you can see they're having a hard time moving it. It's like, man, I know you're feeling it.
Yeah.
I sympathize.
Yep.
What's that?
No, everything's flash. Oh, no, I think, well, maybe she did. But I told her just letting all the information up. And also, yeah, so that way, because what happened was I turned off so I was going to make sure that because I haven't really put my opinions in. Oh, sure. It's very public. It's already in the water. And I got it. Still good.
Oh,
okay. Yeah, really.
You know what? I had like lost 3. They're up there.
Oh, right up there.
Everyone.
Yeah, no, thank you.
We got to pick a Jersey.
That's a Jersey. That's a Jersey.
Oh, it was. I knew those things. He was probably lonely, sort of. Yeah, yeah.
Which is.
Oh, really? Well, when he reads the report, he reads about the power of the LED bulbs and all that. He's going to think he's dreaming. Pretty fast. It's the last meeting before and so the power was out. So we were talking, I brought it up. So all of a sudden we're talking about telephone poles and light bulbs, and I realized we were discussing. Stop. Just stop. We can't talk about this. John, that guy. And sure enough, the entire meeting was waiting for the shoe to drop. Waiting for the shoe to drop. And thankfully it never did.
But you know what?
Whatever it is, it must be. There's discussion.
Well, those are all planned.
Right.
So I know it's usually
Did he make himself a coffee?
Yeah, water.
Water.
Get some water.
I'm not gonna sleep tomorrow. That's how it feels for me. Well, okay, he's back. I'm very Yeah.
Let me ask you a question.
Resume.
Okay, we're back from our recess here. We're going to continue. Any further questions for him?
I would like to, before you do anything, I want to double check some minutes for a minute.
Okay.
And while he's doing that, we just want to make a couple more comments before you close the public hearing.
Yeah, for sure.
Ryan, our engineer, is here, and we figured that we'd let him talk for just a second.
Yeah. Hi, I'll keep it brief. My name is Ryan Hudock with Horizons Engineering. Just on the comments about the site plan layout and all the stormwater and permitting considerations. Just wanted to say that we've although we've just provided a concept so far, we are confident that all of the engineering will work fine. We previously permitted that looped access road and storage facility, so there's no further wetland permits. We acknowledge that we'll need an AOT permit, which is primarily for all the stormwater design. So just wanted to say that like we don't identify any issues with any future design or permitting efforts, I think it'll be very straightforward with that. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of future work to be done, but overall, I think we'll be good. Yeah. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
And I did have just a couple of follow-up comments. One is that, not that it's probably not in the ZBA's purview, but just so you know, I mean, these units all aren't going to get built in a day. It's going to take a while, to do this. So, take that into consideration as you would. The other thing I wanted to talk about was Mr. Mitchell's question regarding the hardship and the financial. And if you look at my in my outline, I didn't have financial in one of the conditions of the property that makes it unique. And what I look at that criteria as sort of like building a wall of bricks, is that we need to look at the property as a whole. And that's what I did. I listed many different aspects of this property that make it unique. So if the board decides that one of those bricks doesn't meet the criteria, the other ones will still support the wall from a hardship standpoint. And then the test on that is whether those unique aspects whether there's a fair and substantial relationship with the general purpose of the ordinance. And I think, it's pretty clear that I had discussed that. So that was what I wanted to mention to the board.
Thank you. Sure. Are we good to move to public comment? Yep. Everybody done with questions?
Mm-hmm.
Are you good to move to public comment, Chuck? Any public comment? Oh,
I just had a quick question.
you got to Mike, speak your name, all that fun stuff. I think the questions have to go this way.
Kathy Mitchell, quick question. You said you were going to do 130.
Kathy, you gotta ask up here.
136.
No, you gotta ask the question. I have to mediate the question. I apologize.
136 multifamily apartments.
Is what they've applied for, yes.
And then he mentioned about some single family senior housing. I just wondered where that was.
He mentioned that they were thinking about it. They made no promises. They said it was at a goal, but not a guarantee.
No.
Single level. Correct.
Single level. Thank you very much.
Thank
Single level. So it would still be a multi-unit. It would be, but a single level versus multi-level.
So that would be included in the 136.
That would be my understanding. They would include in the application. Any other public comment? Anyone online? Are you all good if we close public comment and begin deliberation?
Should we check to make sure there isn't anybody online?
There's
We
none.
did.
There's none? Okay.
No one with their hand raised.
All right, we'll close public comment and begin deliberation. Oh, actually, I need to open it up. I have another question, unless one of you guys can answer it. Do you know what the acreage on this green space is?
Oh,
I believe.
Is
The
it
green
20
was
acres
20?
even? Is it on the plan?
It's 15 in the purple.
But it's 20 in the green.
Yeah, right here.
about 20 acres, yeah. It's on the second plan with the housing units on it.
Thank you. Any thoughts?
My thought is, not sure if you guys would disagree. I would like to table it until next month.
You can make a motion.
Anybody have any comment on it before I make a motion?
I
won't make a motion if I don't need to.
I would not vote in favor of tabling, personally. Whatever you guys think. I think formally here you'd have to make a motion that we then vote on. Am I getting in the weeds of? Yeah. Am I getting in the weeds of just talking about it? Like, should we just formally do this, or?
I'll make a motion to push deliberation to continue this case to next meeting.
Any second?
For the purposes of discussion, I will go.
For the purposes of discussion, I'll at least second the motion. And I know that before we vote, there was time for discussion, so.
Okay, Steve has made a motion to table case to continue. Yeah, I apologize. Thank you.
Continue.
To continue the case. It has been seconded by Chuck. Any discussion?
Yeah, Steve, would you please take a few minutes or whatever and tell us why you feel you need more time?
Well, in particular, the meeting we had with our attorney. I feel that I would like to elaborate on that and continue to think about that before I come to a conclusion.
So basically, in other words, you're not ready to cast a vote one way or the other tonight.
Correct.
I don't think that this case is materially changed in any way that we have a whole, there's not any major new information here to consider based on the original application. So I don't personally see the need to table this. We didn't get anything that's.
We've already approved the property to go multifamily, 40 units. And he's just asking for more units than we originally approved. The property's already been approved for multifamily use.
Are basically, I can speak to my own basis for why I approved it last time, is the increase of the arrival of sewer servicing the property. Sewer servicing the property, that was the big thing that tied other districts in the town being multifamily or single family. This piece of property is now serviced by sewer. I don't think anything's material change. In fact, actually, it's material change for the better because we're going to put 20 acres of land into conservation, in theory, if we approve this. We didn't have that when we approved it last time. But that's why I don't think that there's been a material change in information to be worthy of tabling. Continuing. Apologize. Yes. Continuing. Tabling means we don't talk about it again, right?
Yeah. Initially, I think I was prepared to make a vote, whether one way or the other, but I don't feel that it is right for anyone to pressure you into having to vote tonight. And in that interest, I would vote to delay the meeting until January, if that's what you wish. Just giving you my opinion.
Any further discussion?
Well, my opinion would be similar to Chuck's. I don't want to set up a situation where we have a 4-4 tie for whatever reason by taking one of our board members off because he's not ready to vote on it. I think that would be detrimental to the applicant.
Any more discussion on the motion?
No.
Okay. Everybody ready to vote?
Yep.
Okay. Those in favor of the motion to continue the meeting, we didn't give a date, so we better give a date. When would you like to continue it to in your motion?
It was our next meeting is January 21st, I believe.
January 21st again.
Those in favor of continuing the meeting to January 21st of 2025, vote aye.
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 That's 3 ayes. Those opposed, vote nay. Nay. 3 ayes and 2 nays. It passes. So we will continue this case to January 21st, 2025. Thank you for coming in. All right, minutes.
Oh, that's right. Minutes. Jim, let's see the list.
No comment. I wasn't there. I was recused, I believe.
Oh, true.
No, our last meeting was.
Last meeting, okay.
Our last meeting was when we voted to rehear it.
Previous one. I was recused. The last meeting, where's our zone? Where'd the minutes go?
Does anybody need to read it?
No, I just wanted to find the dates and such on it for the. Oh, thank you. Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes for November 19th, 2024.
Steve has made a motion to approve the minutes for November 19th, 2024. Any seconds? Seconded by Chuck. Any discussion? No?
Oh, all set.
All right. Those in favor of approving November 19th, 2024, say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. The meeting minutes are accepted. All right.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Adjourned. I don't know if we have to move into
I'll
non-public before we technically adjourn. Do we move into non-public before we adjourn?
I think we
It's just just attorney-client? Okay.
need
So,
non-public, I believe.
no, she said it's attorney-client, not non-public.
Oh, okay.
I make a
Any-
motion to adjourn the ZBA meeting at 8:15.
I'll second. Motion made and seconded to adjourn at 8:15. Any discussion? Seeing none, those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Meeting is adjourned at 8:15.
Are we ditching roll call?
We don't have to do roll call, I found out, except if like those never.
Oh.